In the quiet suburb of Maplewood, where life moved at a predictable pace, Sarah Thompson's home had become an enigma. 3 babysitters had come and gone, each departing after a single day without clear explanations. Determined to uncover the truth behind this unsettling pattern, Sarah took a step that would shatter her perception of her family life. The morning sun cast a warm glow over the kitchen as Sarah prepared breakfast. Lily, her 5-year-old daughter, was engrossed in a coloring book, while 2-year-old Max played with his toy cars, his laughter filling the room. Despite the serene domestic scene, a cloud of doubt loomed over Sarah. Her phone buzzed, and she glanced at the screen to see a message from Megan, the babysitter she had hired just the day before. "I'm sorry, but I won't be able to continue working with your family. Thank you for the opportunity." A familiar sense of frustration welled up inside her. Megan had seemed perfect, responsible, kind, and enthusiastic. What could have driven her away so quickly? This was the 3rd time a babysitter had quit abruptly, and Sarah couldn't ignore the pattern any longer. Later that morning, her friend Julie arrived for their regular coffee catch-up. As they settled at the kitchen table, Sarah couldn't hold back her concerns. "I don't get it, Julie," she said, setting her cup down with a sigh. "This is the 3rd babysitter who's quit after just 1 day. They all seem so happy when I hire them, but then they just leave without any explanation." Julie frowned thoughtfully. "That's really strange, Sarah. You're not asking too much of them, are you?" Sarah shook her head. "I don't think so. The kids are well behaved and I'm paying well. I just don't get it." Julie leaned back, tapping her fingers on her cup. "Do you think it could be something else? Maybe it's not the job that's making them leave. Maybe it's something or someone else in the house." Her words hit Sarah like a splash of cold water. She hadn't considered that possibility. Her mind briefly flickered to her husband, Dave, but she quickly dismissed the thought. He had been supportive of her decision to go back to work, or at least, he had said he was. Still, Julie's suggestion planted a seed of doubt that Sarah couldn't shake. That night, as the house settled into silence, Sarah lay awake, her mind racing. She was exhausted from the cycle of hiring new babysitters only for them to quit after a day. Something wasn't adding up, and she was determined to figure it out. The next morning, after Dave left for work, Sarah rummaged through Max's closet and found the old nanny cam they'd used when he was a baby. With shaky hands, she set it up in the living room, tucking it between some books on the shelf where it wouldn't be noticed. She told herself this was just for peace of mind. If nothing was wrong, then she'd have nothing to worry about. But if something, or someone, was behind all of this, she needed to see it with her own eyes. Later that day, she hired another babysitter. Rachel was a sweet college student with a bright smile. She greeted the kids with enthusiasm, and for a moment, Sarah let herself hope that maybe this time would be different. But as she left the house, she didn't head to work. Instead, she parked down the street and pulled out her phone, her heart racing as she watched the live feed from the nanny cam. At first, everything seemed fine. Rachel was playing with the kids, and they seemed happy. But as the minutes ticked by, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to go wrong. And then, just like clockwork, Dave came home early. Sarah's grip tightened on the steering wheel as she watched. Dave hung up his keys, his smile a little too casual as he greeted Rachel. "Hey there, how's it going?" Rachel looked up, a bit startled. "Oh, everything's great. The kids are wonderful." "Good to hear," Dave replied. "Can I talk to you for a second?" Rachel hesitated, but nodded. They moved to the couch, and Sarah leaned closer to the screen, anxiety tightening its grip on her. "Look," Dave began, his tone serious. "The kids can be a handful, especially Max. Sarah's been struggling with postpartum depression, and it's been tough for all of us." Sarah's breath caught. Postpartum depression? That wasn't true. Her hands tightened around the steering wheel as she tried to process what she was hearing. Rachel looked concerned. "I'm so sorry to hear that. But the kids seem fine to me." "They are," Dave said. "Most of the time. But it can get overwhelming. If you feel like this isn't the right fit, it's okay to step away now before things get too complicated." Rachel looked down, clearly unsure of what to say. Then Dave leaned in closer, lowering his voice. "And just between us, I've had problems with babysitters in the past. If they don't leave quietly, things can get messy." Rachel's face turned pale. She quickly nodded. "I understand. Maybe you're right. I should go." Dave smiled, satisfied. "No hard feelings. It's for the best." Rachel wasted no time gathering her things. She barely looked at the kids as she muttered a quick goodbye and left. Sarah sat in her car, completely stunned, her hands trembling as she clutched the phone. Dave had been sabotaging every single babysitter, feeding them lies, scaring them away, and she had never even suspected it. For a long time she just sat there, her mind reeling. Why would he do this? Why had he lied about her? What was he trying to accomplish? Was this about control? About keeping her tied to the house, to the kids, to him? The realization made her stomach twist. By the time she walked back into the house, Dave was sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone as if nothing had happened. Max was playing on the floor, Lily drawing at the table. A perfectly normal scene. But Sarah's world had just turned upside down. She took a deep breath and walked to the kitchen, gripping the counter to steady herself. She needed to confront him. But how? How do you confront someone when you don't even know the full extent of their betrayal? She decided to wait, to think, to plan. That night, after the kids had gone to bed, Sarah sat at the kitchen table staring at the grain of the wooden surface beneath her fingertips. The weight of what she had seen on the nanny cam sat heavily on her chest, making each breath feel shallow and forced. She knew she couldn't let this slide. She couldn't pretend she hadn't seen Dave's manipulation, his blatant lies. Her mind raced with 100 different ways to confront him. Should she yell? Should she demand an explanation? Should she pretend she didn't know anything and see if he would lie to her face? Number. She had spent weeks doubting herself, wondering if she was the problem. Not anymore. When Dave finally emerged from the shower, his hair damp and a towel draped around his shoulders, she spoke before he could even reach for his phone. "I know what you've been doing." He froze. It was only for a second, but Sarah caught it. A quick pause. A flicker of something in his eyes. Surprise? Guilt? He recovered fast, though, straightening his shoulders and offering her a casual smile. "What are you talking about?" he said lightly, as if she had asked him whether he had taken out the trash. She tightened her grip on the edge of the table. "I saw the footage." That caught his attention. "What footage?" Sarah took a deep breath and leaned back, arms crossed. "The nanny cam, Dave. The one I set up after the third babysitter quit. The one that recorded you walking into the living room and feeding Rachel the same lies you told the others. That I have postpartum depression. That the kids are too much to handle. That this house isn't safe." Dave exhaled sharply through his nose and dragged a hand through his hair. His smile had faded. "You were spying on me?" Sarah let out a bitter laugh. "I was trying to figure out why every babysitter quit after a single day. And now I know. You scared them off, Dave. You made them think I was incapable of handling my own children." He shook his head, muttering, "This is ridiculous!" Sarah stood abruptly, sending her chair scraping against the floor. "Ridiculous? Number ridiculous is me spending weeks wondering if I was doing something wrong when it was you the whole time. Why, Dave? Why did you do it?" For the first time since she had started speaking, Dave looked uncomfortable. His fingers tapped against the counter, his mouth pressing into a tight line. He hesitated, then finally sighed. "I was trying to protect you," he said, his voice softer now, almost gentle. "You've been overwhelmed, Sarah. You've been stressed. I thought if I just delayed things, if I kept you home a little longer, you'd realize that you don't need to go back to work, that you're happier here." Sarah's stomach twisted. She stared at him, struggling to process what he was saying. "You decided that for me?" she asked, her voice shaking. "I was trying to do what's best for the family," he insisted. Sarah let out a hollow laugh. No, you did what was best for you. Dave's jaw tightened. Sarah, let's not make this bigger than it is. Bigger than it is? Her voice rose, her frustration bubbling over. You didn't just lie to those babysitters. You lied to me. You made me think that I was the problem, that something was wrong with me. You took away my choices. He scoffed, shaking his head. You're overreacting. Sarah slammed her hand against the table. You don't get to tell me how to feel about this, Dave. You manipulated me. You made me doubt myself. He crossed his arms, his expression darkening. I did what I had to do to keep this family together. You running off to work, leaving the kids with strangers, it's not right. Sarah felt something snap inside her. Strangers? She repeated. You mean the trained professionals I hired so I could contribute to this family? Dave sighed heavily, rubbing his forehead. You don't get it, Sarah. You're needed here. Her breath caught. And what about what I need? She asked quietly. Don't I get a say in my own life? Dave didn't answer. He just looked at her, frustration clear in his eyes. And in that moment, Sarah saw the truth. He wasn't sorry. He didn't think he had done anything wrong. He had no regrets about manipulating her, about taking away her control. He truly believed he was justified. Sarah felt her hands tremble. She needed to leave. A new beginning. The next morning, Sarah packed a bag with shaking hands. She moved quickly, gathering only the essentials for herself and the kids. Lily was watching her, her small face full of confusion. Where are we going, Mommy? Sarah forced a smile. We're going on a little trip, sweetheart. Max, too young to understand, just clung to her leg as she zipped up the last bag. She had called her sister late last night, voice trembling as she explained everything. Julia had barely let her finish before saying, Come here, just come here. She knew this wasn't forever. She didn't have all the answers, but she knew one thing, she couldn't stay here. When she stepped into the living room, Dave was already there, arms crossed. His expression was unreadable. Where do you think you're going? Sarah met his gaze without flinching. To my sister's. His nostrils flared. Sarah, don't be ridiculous. You're blowing this way out of proportion. Am I? She asked, adjusting the strap on her shoulder. Because from where I'm standing, the person who lied, manipulated, and controlled every decision I made is you. And I won't let you do it anymore. His eyes darkened. You can't just take the kids and leave. Her stomach churned. Watch me. For a moment he just stood there, staring at her. And then, finally, he exhaled sharply and stepped aside. You'll be back, he muttered. Sarah didn't look back. She walked out of the house, her children in tow, and into the crisp morning air. As she buckled them into the car, she felt a strange sense of relief. The road ahead was uncertain. She had no idea what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, she knew one thing for sure. She was taking back control of her own life.